Good evening. Okay, let's add something to the stage here. All right, Hotel family, I welcome all comments, questions, concerns, and corrections. I usually start with this slide, and I want to speak a little bit about it today. Of course, there's the information about subscribe, like, share, and subscribe again. Uh, then there's image in the middle. I did a video of this Netcher a while back. This is Jehudi, who is credited with being the Netcher who created writing. And but at the top, there is this Diankh Mira. And I did want to talk a little bit about that since we are in the process of learning to read uh, this text. So I did want to add some information, and I don't see it on my computer right now. So it's something that I forgot to add. I will have to come back to that later. So meanwhile, I did want to share a couple of reading suggestions. Well, first and foremost, there is this book. This is the Miseducation of the Negro, Miseducation of the Negro, written in 1933 by Carter G. Woodson. Of course, you might know Carter G. Woodson as the man who suggested Negro History Week. And of course, now that is Black History or African American History Month, or one or the other. But let me just share what he said back then. He said, and I quote, "The problem of holding the Negro down, therefore, is easily solved when you control a man's thinking. You do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or to go yonder. He will find his quote unquote place, proper place, and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back of the door. I'm sorry, you do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary." Again, I think that's a book that you should have somewhere in your library or get access to it. Another book that I would highly recommend uh, oops, is this book, Stolen Legacy. Stolen Legacy, written by George James, 1954, talks more about the theft of the uh, cultural genius and philosophical, mathematical, science genius of the ancient Africans, which, of course, a lot of credit is given to Greek people for that. But here's a quote from James's book. Let's see, I'm going to start with both, like the third line down. It says, "Both groups, speaking of blacks and whites, have been the common victim of miseducation rising from a false tradition about the African continent, and it has caused them to develop attitudes according to their common belief. The white people, a superior complex, and the black people, the corresponding inferiority complex. And if we are to accomplish a reformation in race relations, it is obvious that both racial groups must combine their efforts in the abandonment and destruction of that mentality which has plunged the black people into this social plight." Okay, that's one way of looking at it. So again, that's this book here, Stolen Legacy. This is a copy that's been used, so it's kind of looking kind of tethered. The third book that I will offer up is for people who are interested in learning more about translating into English from Egyptian language. The Rosetta Stone, again, just pulling out interesting quote to me, at least in my opinion. This quote is from this book, and it talks about the fact, well, the Rosetta Stone is the key, which was the key to opening up the translations of the Mdw Ntr. Let's just go back. So in the Rosetta Stone, there are three languages written on one piece of stone. The very top language is what we would commonly call, the top two languages are hieroglyphs. The second middle one was identified as Demotic, if I'm not mistaken. And then the bottom is Greek. And at the time, people knew how to read Greek in the late 1800s. And some people still read Greek. So they were able to identify some of the words, because when the Greek speaking people, the Ptolemies and Alexander came into Egypt, they adopted the regalia and they adopted the gods and goddesses of the people in Egypt, the people who we would call Kemites. Anyway, so this stone, the Rosetta Stone, as it's called because of where it was found, has it shows that Ptolemy II, I think there were 13 Ptolemies and 7 Cleopatras. But anyway, their names, or some of the names, are written on the stone, so those translations made it easy. And as we learn to read this language, one of the things we have to recognize is the symbols don't change. So we're always going to recognize Ma'at as a female Netzeret with the feather in the head holding the Ankh. Below Ma'at, we see the basket without a handle. Then we have the loaf of bread for Tem. That's a sled there, Tem. And then we have that open-ended piece, which says unidentifiable. I think it's a part of a boat. No one has really said exactly what it is. And then we see the name below that. We see the house. We see the triangular shape is the slanted hill, twisted flags, the mouth, and then we see the cobra standing erect. We see a loaf of bread, and below that we see a symbol that looks like an X. That is a symbol that we talk about the name of a city. So again, in reading the Mdw Ntr, it's important to recognize that the symbols do not change. It's just that the combinations of, just like the alphabet, it's the combinations that might suggest different meanings. Be that as it may, moving right along. So, and that is what we want to do. We want to read the hieroglyphs, or read Mdw Ntr. So again, I welcome everybody. And anytime you have any comments, you might post them because I will see them. Okay. All right, so what is our goal? Our goal is to be able to read the sacred script of our African ancestors. That's my goal, to get everybody to at least take on that challenge. Speaking it might be incomprehensible, hard to believe. So you know what? Even though people are hearing me. So I didn't have myself set up here. All right, so I might want to eliminate this. I don't know if anybody heard what I was saying. I didn't have mic on my head. So, but what can I say? We make mistakes and we still continue. All right, so let's get back to the slide. And hopefully people will catch up, or I will see what I did wrong. And I could either delete the whole video or update it. We'll see. All right, so this is actually partly a history lesson. I mean, I think they're all kind of history lessons, even though my focus is primarily on language and the idea of being able to read the language. But again, there's not a whole lot of separation between these topics. We've made these artificial separations. So when we look at the left-hand side, we're looking at, again, this is, as I said, Gemek Nefer. And when we look at Gemek Nefer, it's suggesting that we are trying to find something. Uh, I've translated that several ways. It's, again, clearly there's something that we're searching for. And if it's found, it's beautiful, or maybe what we're looking for is to find the beauty in something. So, what is history? Well, it's an account of the past, and it's an account, and some accounts differ, or accounts differ, depending on one perspectives, but the truth does not differ. The truth is always the truth. It's just how people present that. And we rely on evidence to construct accounts of the past, evidence, hopefully being fact based evidence. And then we must question the reliability of each piece of evidence. And any single piece of evidence is not, or is insufficient to build a plausible account. This is from a group called Digital Inquiry Group. I thought I want to share that because it looked important. And then we have a sourcing. Where do we get the sources, right? Well, who wrote this? What's the author's perspective? Why was it written? When was it written? Where was it written? Is this source reliable? Why? Why not? Why not? Well, the Rosetta Stone is one of those sources that we use for identifying the translations, and so that source is pretty reliable. I think it was written at a time um, when certain prejudices that exist now didn't exist, and it's just a translation from the Mdw Ntr to a different level of Mdw Ntr and down to the languages identified as Greek. Okay, so and this has been we've had access to this. Like, again, we have Stolen Legacy, 1954, Miseducation of Negro, 1933. So these books have been around, and there's been stuff around even longer than that. I happened to come across this image several days ago, and this is a photograph taken by Francis Benjamin Johnson in 1898. And from what I can gather, this was taken at Hampton University. What really caught my attention, number one, was the pyramids first. I saw that first. But then I took a closer look, and if you look at the far right hand corner, you can almost make out the image on the ceiling of George Washington. With a magnifying glass, I was able to see that. Right below the image of George Washington is an image, some sort of a poster of the Nile River and that area of the world, which we now call Egypt. Moving to the left, behind the female, I think that's word Egypt. That's something written in script, and I cannot see it. It's not clear enough. But if you continue across the left on the board, that is clearly, in my opinion, a piece of the Rosetta Stone. And then keep going, we see the pyramid. So we see the instructor is giving these students, and these are, at this point, they call them Negro and Indian students, information about Egypt. And right behind the instructor's head, we actually see some photographs. So information about Egypt is something that's been around and apparently was being presented at least in the 1899, in 1899, according to this photograph. But obviously, they stopped giving that information or sharing that. And again, maybe at the same time, they were sharing that at the Hampton uh, University. We see this elementary school setting. Again, same photographer, I'm pretty sure. Same time period, I'm pretty sure, 1899. And we see this is a picture where the instruction is about the landing of the Pilgrim Fathers. So, history has been presented, from different perspectives. So these students are learning about their Pilgrim Fathers and probably getting ready to celebrate what we call Thanksgiving. Again, a third picture from the same period. Again, when I come across images that that captures my attention. I always want to share them. This is a habit that I've had for years. This one again looks like these students, and probably this is from the same group that were looking at the pyramids, based on the outfits that I'm looking at. But here they're learning about the indigenous people. Now, some topics apparently were taken out of the curriculum. Like there's really nothing, I think, in the history curriculum, American history curriculum. I shouldn't say nothing, but virtually nothing about the native people who were here before. And then there's really nothing about Egypt or Africa, and definitely not the two, because according to most writers, Egypt is not even in Africa. I find that hard to believe, but it is what it is. Okay, but I'll go. Okay, getting to my goal. Takes me a while to get there sometimes. Our goal is to be able to read the sacred script of our African ancestors as written on this stela by our African ancestors, and this was written way back when. So again, just for this time period, we're focusing on this stela. And I played with this idea for a while. So this one, I've worked out a couple of things, and my goal is always to learn as I go through this process. So I'll tell you, I learned a lot. That's the greatest thing about teaching in my head, the fact that you also can learn. So, so of course, not of course, I don't want to use that term. The stela looks like the same thing that we see in graveyards, and I'm going to say, since the stela came first, then the tombstones that we see in graveyards are a copy, and maybe not a great copy, but they probably serve a very similar purpose, in terms of identifying something about those people who have passed on. Well, that's what gravestones do. Is that what the stela does? I guess that's a good question. Well, let's read it and see what it says and see if there is some connection. Well, this particular series of gravestones, or stela, or stela, either way, I think stela is one way, start off with the same set of characters, and that is the suit plant, the loaf of bread, the offering plate with a loaf of bread on it, with a piece of bread on it, and the triangular shape of bread, which is at the end. And so there's three pieces of bread there. There is the bread that's transliterated with the letter T. There is the bread that's in the triangular form that's translated with the letters DI. It's a biliteral. And then there's the loaf of bread on the offering plate. Together, the loaf of bread on the offering plate is transliterated with the letters HTP, and we say Hotep. So when I open up my sessions, I always say Hotep, which is a greeting that the African-centered community has kind of adopted. So, so this is identified as the Htp Di Nswt. And so the Htp Di Nswt is a phrase that is the beginning of many stela, many stela. Not all, but many. So the stela on the right there, if you look carefully, you can find some symbols of Hotep, but you will not find, I should say, I did not find an exact uh, series of symbols. The suit plant, the loaf of bread, the Hotep symbol, and the D symbol. I didn't find them together. I mean, there are some places where I can see the D symbol, I can see the Hotep symbol, but I don't see the Htp Di Nswt on the right, but I do see it on the left. And then I have two more examples where you see they begin with the Htp Di Nswt. So this is going to be my accounting, my accurate accounting of the Htp Di Nswt. So it is a history lesson. Time frame, I'm not really, I don't have a good time frame to identify these with at this point, because they don't have dates on them like tombstones do. But they do have Mdw Ntr, and that's the goal, to be able to read the Mdw Ntr. At the very top of this stela, we have the left and right eyes of Heru, right? Sometimes I spell it HRW. In this case, I spell it HERU. It's also spelled HORUS and pronounced Horus. Uh, and so with these symbols, we also see in between the two, we see the Shanu. In this case, this is a circular Shanu, and the Shanu is the symbol of eternity. The eyes are identified as Wajek. The Shanu can be elongated or is elongated when we write a name in it. So my understanding is the names are supposed to live for eternity when they're written inside the Shanu, and clearly these names are still with us. The Ptolemies are at least 2,000 years ago. They're about the beginning of uh, at the end of the second century, first century of BC. So they're there. But again, you have other names of the Natsubitis who've been names of living in eternity, as far as we can tell, because they're more than 4,000 or 5,000 years old. So that Chinoo has preserved specific names. All right, so as we read this Htp Di Nswt, this series of texts, again, it starts off Htp Di Nswt. Now, it's also interesting the order. So we know from, hopefully remember from early readings, that Sut and Nasut is the representative of Upper Egypt. We unfortunately use the term pharaoh to represent that person, but I avoid that. So I talk about this is the representative of Upper Egypt, and he is Nasut, or sometimes said Sutan. Hotep means to give. No, I'm sorry. D means to give, and Hotep is the offering. Excuse me. So we're offering. So is it someone offering to the suit, or is it the suit making the offering? Well, that's again the challenges with language, because what comes from what is first here, the subject of the verb is, because the D is the verb to give. Suit, nasut is a subject. So is it nasut that's giving, or is it someone giving hotel? Not sure. However, this part I'm sure about. We have the Neturette set, and that's her, even though all we see is a seat. I'm reading from right to left. That is the Neturette set. And then we have the all-seeing eye, which is transliterated IRT. And we have the seated Netur, which is transliterated NTR. Now, when we see those three together, that tells us that seated Netur, well, before I get that, so first of all, the seat is Aset, right? I forgot to put that slide in there. Also, we call Aset, or Aset is identified as Isis in most cases, but I use Aset, and that's our idea. That's so when when anyone spoke of Aset during this time period, this is the image they had, and those three symbols together represent the name of Usir. In Usir, we identify again, it's called Osiris, right? So those are I guess, the Greek or Roman words for that. Usir is the word that I will use. So it's kind of fascinating that his name is identified by having her in front, and then the all-seeing eye, and then the Netur, but that's his name. It's also important to understand, and I'm coming to this understanding, that anyone who's sitting as the Nasut is considered to be the living Osiris, the living Usir, and the female sitting next to him is considered to be the living Aset. So Usir and Aset are always in existence, and sometimes they're represented or in existence as uh, other leaders or representatives, or simple to say, so that anyone sitting on the throne is representing Usir, and the female sitting with him is representing Aset. I hope that made sense. We also see Usir and Aset at the weighing of the heart, right? Because it is to Usir that you're headed, which kind of makes sense because if we talk about Hotep Di Nswt, we're saying that there's an offering being made to um, Usir. So this is Hotep Di Nswt, Usir. So the offering is being made to Usir, which again kind of makes sense because we're talking about what apparently is a grave stone, a headstone. And then after the seated Netcher, we have the three water pots, which are transliterated K, H, and T, the ripple of water, transliterated N, and the loaf of bread T. So I think that loaf of bread and the ripple of water are the phonetic complements to the K, H, and T. So if you didn't even have the ripple of water and loaf of bread, that would still be K, H, and T. All right. We talk about phonetic complements before. And then the determinative, right? The symbol behind that, which is the feather of Ma'at, and a symbol which looks like a loaf of bread. Actually, it's a representative of a city or a location. And this particular location is a location that's identified as the West. And it is Usir who is seated in the West, who belongs to the West, right? Because the water pots in Ket is sometimes translated as belongs to. Then we have the Egyptian eagle, the symbol, the flag. Then we have a wooden column horizontally above the basket, and and then we have the symbol of the key of life. So together, um, the eagle and the wooden column is translated as great. And again, we know that nature is nature. So we have great nature, Lord, everlasting life. And it could be, I guess, an of in there. We don't have the word of, the preposition of. So English has a preposition of. Then the next line, again, a little complicated for me because I don't know what that first symbol it is. It could be a seated man. I'm not sure. Then below that we have the mountains, which is transliterated DJW, the ox horns, WPT, and then we have determinatives. Again, the determinative has no letter or transliteration. It just tells us that these are road signs, right? So somehow these are road signs to some place in the mountains. And that place, again, now we have the basket. And so this is a basket with one piece of land. Usually we have two pieces. So we normally have this thing Neb Taui. This is just Neb Ta. So this is the Lord of the land. And we know that that's the land because below that we have the is what it is symbol, which is that little stroke. And to the right of that, we have the irrigation canal. So together that tells us that that is what it is. So this is the Lord of the land. And then we have the arm in the hand with the wand above two mountains. So this is the Lord of that land. And this is identified as the Holy Land. So this is translated in English as the Holy Land, the Holy Lands. So again, connecting the two sentences, the two lines, we have this is we're making an offering to someone. Is this offering being made to Usir, who belongs to the West and is the great Lord of this region and this the Lord of the Holy Land. And now again we have the triangle loaf of bread, which is to give or D. The folded cloth with the ripple of water and the three plural strokes is translated in textbooks as you, female plural you, like use or your, uh, and it could be, so it could be you give, but that's with the folded cloth is translated as she in some cases, so that would be a plural she. But again, that's just could be they give or you give, right? So you give, and coming after that tells me that uh, what's being given is being given to the house of light, which is pair hedge, right? We see the house above that symbol, which is a symbol for a mace, which is again a symbol for light. And around the mace is we have the loaf of bread on the right, and then we have the milk jar on the left of the mace. So that's given to the house milk and bread, and the plural strokes tells me that it's not just one, it's plural, giving milks and breads, so breads and milks, and also giving uh, oxen head and duck head. So we're giving, I guess, beef and fowl and cloth and rope and bread. And it's so this is the offering. So this is what's being offered to Lucia. Now, this line also gave me some more insights into stuff because this is the symbol for Necha, but there's a little extra piece on Necha here. And then we have the soup plant, but this soup plant doesn't have all of its branches. And so when I looked this up, this is suggesting that this is the birth of the Nechas or the beginning of the Necha, which is kind of interesting. And then we have these symbols. This is the ripple of water, tethered rope, the mouth. So we have the NTCHR, and that would be Netcher. And that would be Netcher. And we have the plural strokes tell me this plural. And then we have the determinative. I don't know what that determinative is, but I have seen it before. And still haven't been able to find out exactly what it is. Looking at it now, it looks like the sun setting on a bowl, but that doesn't compute in my head. So just throwing it out there. Someone find an answer for that. I'd be willing to listen. But I know that's the ripple of water, tethered rope, the mouth. So that's nature, 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 nature room. So we have now we have the garden hoe, which is MR by itself, but then we have the R below it, and we have H. So that's MRH, and then we have the loaf of bread, that's T. So that's MRHT. And the determinative in this case, again, not sure what that is. It could be something with fire on top. I don't know. It's not too dissimilar from the other determinative that I thought was a sun on top, but I don't know. So I'm not going to hamper a guess, but I know it. The name of it is MRHT if we do the translation, or I should say, garden hoe mouth, twisted flax, and loaf of bread with plural strokes. So those would be the words or the letters as we use English to define how we would pronounce that determinative. And then we have the pupil of the eye, the loaf of bread. That's a basket. I think that's the loaf of bread below it. Seems like it is the loaf of bread. I'm pretty sure. I didn't properly. It's hard to tell even with the original, but I'm going to say it's a loaf of bread. So the basket with the loaf of bread tells me that it's a female lord. And I tried to come up with a word for that last time, but it's a female lord. The pupil, not sure. The pupil usually stands for 1/4, but I don't know why that would be 1/4. So there's something else I don't know. A lot that I don't know. This I do know. This is Nefer. So this is beautiful, and but it's Nefert because we have the symbol for Nefer again, which could stand by itself. But we also have the horned viper in the mouth. That's the F and the R, and then we have the loaf of bread, which is the T. So I know that this is Nefert. So this is beautiful, and this is female. So it's a female beautiful. So something happening with female beautiful. Don't know what it's modifying or what it's talking about, but it's there. This is almost pretty, I don't want to say apparent, but we do see a water jug that is pouring water, and there's a leg and a foot, and the loaf of bread. So this tells me that this beautiful female is making a libation or pouring water, right? Because that's what's happening, and it's a beautiful female, right? And here we have Hotep again, and we Hotep. So we just have the offering plate with the bread on top, and we have the bread below that, and then we have the stool and the loaf of bread. Now, the stool and the loaf of bread is usually identified or translated as this. So this would be this hotel. Right? So I'm I'm less interested in quote unquote translating as I am into reading it and recognizing the symbols. I'm going to leave that to younger people to come and translate. Well, I'll do some translating. I'm not going to try to translate everything. I just don't think I'm that good yet. All right, next line, moving on. Ripple of water, two arms raised in praise and a ripple of water, which can be translated with the transliterated with the letters N, K, A, and N. And then we have the ox tongue over the man doing the same thing, which is praising. So it's kind of redundant. Uh, the fact that there's an oxtail and there's plural strokes tells me, makes me believe that this is oral praises, and there are many of them, which kind of makes sense. It's like, this man is making many praises, and we have this is a check with two reed leaves, and that would be translated or pronounced ui. So this man is making verbal praises to, and we have the stool, the loaf of bread, the twisted flax. That is the name of the Necher Pittah. Always. Well, yes, always. When it's just like that. And that's Pittah. Actually, Pittah was on the earlier stela at the top. I didn't point him out at that point. I should have. But this is Pittah. Right. Pittah, according to what I saw, and I think I saw this on Facebook, in 1929, they called Pittah Oscar. For 3000 BC, 5,000 years ago, they called him Pittah. Same image, different name, and totally different meaning, I'm sure. Even though both of them are kind of sought after and praised, I guess. All right, then we have the doorbolt, which is transliterated either with the S or the Z, the basket with the handle, K, the mouth, ripple of water. Now, in this case, again, I think before I said the folded cloth is translated as she. Well, the bolt is also, because it has that S transliteration, is considered she, and then the basket with the handle is you or your, and the mouth with the ripple of water is translated as to name or name. So it's like her name, she, her name, and she, her name is here. And so she, her name is PPI or PIP. I don't think, again, because of symmetry, they would not have put the two reed leaves. I'm sorry, they would not put the reed leaf in between the two stools because it just wouldn't look right. So I think it would be PPI with maybe another vowel thrown in there for pronunciation. Again, I'm not trying to focus on pronunciation. And then the symbols to the beyond that has made me believe that that's the way we identify that this is a name, right? So we have those two strokes above the arm and the hand and the two strokes below. We'll see similar relationships like that. So keep that in mind. So I'm gonna, you know, postulate that that's saying this is her name, or we call her, this is her name. So RN. So RN would be to call somebody, right? So, so to call somebody, and oops, wrong way. And we would call somebody by their name. This is the three foxtails tied together at the top, the cloth, which is just a phonetic complement here because the foxtails by itself ends in an S. So that S is again phonetic complement. And the ripple of water. So the foxtails is translated as to give birth, right? So this is give birth, and the ripple of water suggests us give birth to. And give birth to, again, we have the basket, the loaf of bread, and the house, the determinant for the house. So that was to give birth to the female lord of the house. And again, now we see the name again, because at the very end, we see the two horizontal lines around a loaf of bread. And above that, we see the pestle and a loaf of bread. The pestle by itself is TI. Now, the reed leaf in front of the seated person with their hand to the mouth, it just tells me that it's I don't know how to say it. It's like is. I think the word is would best be replaced by is. So this is the person T, right? The loaf of bread. I'm sorry, the pestle with the loaf of bread. I would say is T, maybe TT. How it all fits together, it's a little more complicated than I'm willing to put you through right now, or put myself through right now. And this, so again, this makes some sense. Again, we're reading this as if it were a headstone, a tombstone, which kind of makes sense. And so we keep getting information about people. In this case, we have the pintailed duck, and it is what it is. So we know that this is the sun. And then we have the pintailed duck over the horned viper. So that tells us is his son. So this is the son, his son, and then we have the mouth with the hand and the arm and the hand, and I think that's a loaf of bread in this hand. So this is a giving. So, but I think again, because of the two vertical lines surrounding the loaf of bread, I think that tells me that this is a person's name. So we have the son, his son, and then the next three symbols, the mouth, the arm and hand twice, is the name of that son. This is my postulate, my idea. Then again, we have the pintail duck, right? The determinative for it is what it is. So that means it is the son, and the horned viper, that means it's his son. And it is, again, we see the seated person with the hand in the mouth. And this is two reed leaves. So this is like E, long E. So we have two sons being listed, I believe, right now. And then we have the pintail duck in this case, but there's a loaf of bread over the pintail duck. So we know this is Sot. So we know this is daughter. And again, we have the horned viper. So this is his daughter. Now, his daughter's name looks like the name of the Netjer Patal, but we have the P, the T, the H, but then we also have a T and the pintail duck. So this name seems to include Ptah in it, but it's Ptah Taset, Ptah something I can't pronounce. Pthtsa. Right. And then we have the two vertical lines around the loaf of bread, which again, according to my theory, tells me that this is a name. This is the end of a name. Likewise, we have pintail duck, loaf of bread. So this is female. Then because they couldn't get the horned viper below, they put the horned viper above, and that is his daughter, his daughter. And now this is merit, right? So merit, and this is merit F. So this is his love, because remember, mirror is love. It can look like the canal, or it can look like the hole. Both of those are translated as love. So this is his daughter, his love, and again and is a seated person, and is the pestle and the reed leaf. So this is another T. Right. I found that interesting, but I don't know if this is the same T as in two lines above. It could be, maybe. I don't know. And then lastly, we have this vertical column. Now we see the horned viper. Excuse me a second. I had a sneeze coming on there. Sorry about that. All right, so in this column, you can see the horned viper, so we know that it's his. Above that, we see the well filled with water and the loaf of bread. Now, we saw this before, if you've been with me before. This is Hemt. So this is, Hemt is um, woman in house, right? This is his woman in the house, female lord, Nebta here, and we see the determinant for her house. Neb is the thing that looks like a rectangle that's open. That's the determinative. Above that, we see the basket and the loaf of bread. And then we have the twisted flax, the stool, and the reed leaf. And below that, we see the two horizontal lines surrounding a loaf of bread. Again, back to my theory that tells me I have found someone's name above that, and her name is H uh, HPI. But that's the challenge. I mean, it's a great challenge. I don't mind the challenge. I just know that it's not easy, but I feel like I'm making progress. So, how is this related to history? That's, I guess, one of my so-called focuses today, right? Um, it's an account. This is an account of the past, right? And it's from the perspective of the people who were around when this person was, I'm going to say, passing on to the afterlife, and the perspective, I'm going to say, is probably honest. I mean, if this is probably true information, um, and so we can use this to talk about the past and what happened in the past, and it's pretty reliable. And this wouldn't be the only evidence we use. I mean, we can look at other stelae that have Htp Di Nswt on it, make some comparisons, and then identify the time period in which they were developed. But in terms of the sourcing, who wrote this? Someone wrote this at the time that this person lived. Uh, Again, just as we write tombstones now, I don't know that everything on our current tombstones are true, but this is the time we're living in. Uh, it was written to record information about this person, right? And it was written at the time this person existed, and it was written where this person lived. So it's pretty reliable source. But when we study history, one of those courses that I definitely did not like in school, um, it's important to make those connections and try to understand where we come from and how we fit in all of this as Africans, as we move from colored to Negro to Black. And hopefully, we'll land on African at some point. Here's another stela that I saw that at some point I may tackle. But the purpose, my purpose is to learn and to get better at reading this. And hopefully, people out there are making some progress in learning. And hopefully, some of my videos are helpful. As I look back on them, I think I've been very consistent about uh, how I've attacked this project. But meanwhile, I'm going to sign off and hope that this isn't as bad as I think it could have been. I know I didn't have this fancy low tech gear on before. At some point, I might upgrade myself and do better, technologically speaking. But meanwhile, I appreciate your being here. I know there have been some folks here, they were in and out. I know some people will look at this later on, and hopefully, some people will make comments and give me some feedback. Meanwhile, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to try to be less. I'm trying to do. I'm going to do more with less. Maybe that's what I mean. All right. Uh, everybody have a great end of the day and enjoy yourself, whatever you do. So, I would say Shem Hotep family. Again, look forward to your comments, questions, concerns, and or corrections. And you can always email me at iamallafrican@gmail.com. Shem Hotep.